Okay, should be officially recording now. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you attendees for showing up and participating in this event. This is kind of a newer series that we're doing from the Pomerantz Career Center, so really appreciating you being here to listen to industry insights today focused on environment and sustainability careers. So I will have our panelists introduce themselves here in a second, but first want to introduce myself as well. My name is Abby Case. I use she, her pronouns, and I work here at the Pomerantz Career Center as a career coach, and then I also work in employer engagement. So just a quick note for attendees, while you are not able to unmute yourself just to keep things running smoothly, you can use the Q&A function. So you should see that on the top bar somewhere. You can use that throughout if you have questions and don't want to forget them, and we'll save them for the end. Otherwise, you can hold your questions and wait, and we will have some time, about 10 minutes or so, to ask any audience questions. But before that, we'll have some set questions that we'll ask of our panelists first. So with that all being said, we will go ahead and get started. Panelist, and the first question I will ask you will ask about your educational background and all that, so you don't need to get into those details yet. I will just have you go around real quick and say your name and your occupation, so where you work and what you do there real quick, and then we'll start the questions. So if we can start with Noah, then Claire, then Ben, then Trysten.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Noah Ressa, and I am an outreach and recruitment coordinator for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Levy. I am a talent acquisition manager with Roquette. We are a global leader in plant-based ingredients in the food, beverage, and pharmaceutical spaces. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Curtis. I'm with Eocene Environmental Group as a senior project manager. We are an environmental consulting company based out of West Des Moines.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trysten Culler, not Megan. I work with Green Iowa AmeriCorps for Iowa City Climate Action. I am the education coordinator.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So we'll just stay in that same order for this first question. So if you can share your educational background and how it contributed to your current career path. So again, we'll start with Noah, Claire, Ben, then Trysten.
Sure. Well, I went to Michigan State University, and I studied botany and entomology when I was there. One of the big moments in my educational career was working at a lab while I was obtaining my degree. That kind of gave me a good foot up of, having some real world experience, kind of knowing what I wanted to do working on tree fruit entomology. I always kind of had an interest in invasive species. And so that's the career path I followed. But once I got into the Department of Agriculture, there's so many different things that we do here that people might not be aware of. So I started traveling a lot, looking for invasive species, running a lot of town hall meetings, which is how I got into this space of doing outreach and recruitment. I also do a lot of program and project management because I kind of coordinate our career fairs all over the country. So, you never know what you might go, where your career might take you. But my degree, obviously, in entomology and botany, set me on this path.
I actually studied social work at the Millersville University of Pennsylvania. I live in Philadelphia, so went to school about an hour and a half from here as well. I clearly am not doing social work right now, but I do think that it really prepared me for a career in human resources and recruitment very well. I interact with lots of different people all day from different walks of life, and kind of help to match them up with the right opportunities here at Roquette. And then I feel like also kind of take on that role of making sure that they are getting ramped up with the organization, and meshing with their manager well, things like that. So kind of everything past recruitment as well. So I wouldn't say it directly correlated, but I think in the business of people, and definitely a dotted line there as well.
Right. Yeah. So I, again, Ben Curtis with the Eocene Environmental Group. I studied environmental policy at Drake University for my undergrad, and then I went to grad school at the University of Iowa for urban and regional planning back about 10 years ago. So in terms of getting career path, I think both those programs really was a diverse, kind of broad set of knowledge that allowed me to work in private, nonprofit, and public sectors so far in my career. And while I doubt I think I'll ever leave the private world, I think it's where I landed and stay for a while. I think, based on those two fairly broad programs in the environmental industry, I think moving back to public or nonprofit would be possible because of that pretty broad-based education. And yes, if there's a takeaway, at least from my 12 years in the workforce so far, I think it relates back to these two broader programs, but the lack of kind of pigeonholing myself into something that I probably did care about at one point, but I think the ability to stay diverse in kind of making yourself indispensable at a company you're with by being a generalist, I think is certainly a good thing. Specialization is great without a doubt, but if you really believe it's your life's work and it's not something that's at risk of getting phased out or not going to be demanded in the future, but generalists, just in my experience, have better success at holding jobs and able to adapt as the industry and market changes. So circling back, I think the environmental policy and the urban and regional planning programs really allowed me to diversify my background and experience. Certainly. Thanks.
So I got my undergraduate degree in environmental health at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. And during university, I interned with the sustainability office on campus, and then the next summer, the North Carolina Coastal Federation, focusing on coastal management. And then after graduation, I moved to Fukushima, Japan to work as an assistant language teacher. So I did some global work as well. And then when I was deciding to move back to the States, me and my partner are moving to Iowa City, and Green Iowa was hiring, and it was a field that I did not have experience in yet, that being energy efficiency. So I applied, and because I was interested, and now I work as the education coordinator because I have experience being an educator. And I think, like Ben said, just diversifying your portfolio and also just your skills as well really helps when it comes to environmental work or just sustainability work as well.
All right, thank you, everyone. And I'll go ahead and say, just for really all of the questions, what is environment and sustainability? It's not necessarily one industry, one field. So you're all obviously representing kind of different facets of it. So obviously answering questions based on kind of how it impacts your particular area, that's completely fine. Or if you want to keep it general, that's cool too. So the next question will be, what are some of the most significant trends currently shaping your industry? So this time we'll start with Ben, Noah, Trysten, and wrap up with Claire.
Sure, thanks. I had a couple things noted for this one. So I work with our contaminated sites program, which is we work with communities across the Midwest, mainly in Iowa, but across the Midwest on addressing blight and contamination in properties that really need some love. And it seems like federal investment in addressing these types of properties has been on the uptick, which certainly keeps us busy. There's been a pretty good influx of federal investment in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act and and some other bills coming out, but that those programs, once they hit the local level, really keep us busy to make sure that a lot of blight and a lot of river towns and a lot of rural towns in Iowa and across the Midwest are seeing some reinvestment that's really needed. We do some private due diligence work for private development, but really when the EPA funnels money to municipalities and to regional agencies, that's when we start to get really busy. And it does seem like that's, at least for the next 5 years, probably not going to change too much. A lot of it's already in place. The current administration put in place that, would be hard to wipe out immediately. So, and then I just want to touch in terms of trends. I feel like AI is a trend nationally right now. And I think the good thing is we really haven't seen it enter our industry too much yet, at least from the technical side that I work with on soil and groundwater and vapor intrusion and these things that really provide human health risks. We haven't seen AI too much in our industry, significant trends elsewhere, but I think from my perspective, the lack of intrusion so far has been positive for us. We, as a consulting company, folks come to us for our experience and our knowledge and our understanding of pretty technical things that, to date, I imagine a computer could, but we're just not seeing it yet. And I think, that integration could devalue what we're doing a little bit. And, we're just we're in a place where I think AI right now in the environmental consulting world is a day-to-day workflow tool and less of a tool that allows us to shape how we put reports together and analyze data. So just wanted to throw that out there in terms of, significant national trends. We just haven't seen it too much. And I think that's just in the environmental consulting world, people are coming back to professionals that have the ingenuity and the innovation to provide data for decision makers that isn't generated by a computer necessarily. So thanks.
So for where I sit, one of the biggest trends right now is just the continuing shrinking of the world, the increase of global travel, of global trade, just poses a lot of, benefits. It's great for American farmers to be able to get a higher price exporting their products. It's also great for the American consumer to be able to get, fresh fruits and vegetables all year round. At the same time, with that increased travel, it's just more and more invasive species that have opportunities to get here. That also goes into that whole One Health aspect where, some of these pests may pose a risk to humans. So things like avian influenza obviously has been a huge deal. I spent a lot of time in the Iowa area over the last couple of years because that's, my job is responding to these disease outbreaks. So just trying to inform the public of the risk of these things and why they shouldn't be smuggling agricultural products into the country. And then, balancing the delicate, political atmosphere and talking to people about why the federal government is here and why we would like your cooperation on these major, diseases or pest outbreaks. So it's very important to try to, get as much stakeholder buy-in as you possibly can and just to try to predict the unknown, because we don't know what the next big pest or the next big disease is that's going to find its way to our shores. And so we're just kind of constantly trying to anticipate what the next move is going to be.
I would say a trend that is shaping like the climate action world is obviously it's getting hotter. We all know that. And this trend will continue. And on the average number of days in Iowa above 90 degrees each year is usually 22. And that average is going to increase within the next century to about 92 days each year. But this increase of heat is going to shape the way we plan events, how we schedule energy efficiency audits, and also just how we coordinate things with the public as well. Because if it's too hot outside, obviously people do not want to be outside doing a tree planting or a litter pickup as well. But also with that trend, we are having to increase education when it comes to increased heat exposure, ways to prevent it, and also look more and rely on the urban heat map and serve those communities that are experiencing this extreme urban heat, and try to serve these communities better with increased tree plantings, education, and also like heat stroke prevention, and basically meeting these communities where they are with this increased heat trend. And as an education coordinator, I would say a trend that we are seeing is people are wanting to get more involved, which is awesome, especially with this climate crisis. There are people, young, old, middle-aged, everybody. People are passionate about the environment and are willing to get stuff done, and that's a great thing to see.
Yeah, I think for Roquette, so just for a little bit of context, we take crops, so corn, potatoes, anything, you know, kind of that comes from the earth, and break that down and create raw materials that then goes into products that you would see in a grocery store. You know, think like the potato starch that goes into a Pringle, corn syrup, things like that, and then also pharmaceutical excipients. So what we are constantly looking to do is figuring out ways to minimize our carbon footprint, ways that we can reduce the amount of water that we're using in our processes, the amount of emissions that we're giving off at our manufacturing plants. Our largest plant is in Keokuk, Iowa. We're right on the cusp there of Illinois and Iowa, but that's our biggest US-based manufacturing plant. So ways that we can reduce the outputs that we are doing in that plant. It's, you know, I think that also thinking about climate change and the climate crisis, and how do we also keep our people safe as well on these really hot days, these really cold days and snowy days. It's a 24/7 operational plant. You know, so I think we're seeing the impact that has to the business as we're trying to move towards a more plant-based environment here globally. You know, I think it's a more sustainable model as well, but then kind of focusing on what can we do in the process of creating those ingredients to reduce our footprint too.
All right, thank you all for those insights. So you kind of talked about it a little bit with some of the trends and everything that you're seeing, but what's the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges working in an environment and sustainability related field, and how can aspiring professionals prepare to address this challenge? This time we'll start with Trysten and go to Ben, Claire, then Noah.
I would say a big environmental challenge in Iowa City is definitely the lack of energy efficient buildings. And so buildings are usually the biggest source of emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and 95% of those emissions related to buildings are community-owned buildings. For example, the Recreation Community Center. So having to collaborate with these builders or having to retrofit a building to make it more energy efficient, or also just having to educate people what energy efficiency is, and putting it in, you know, where it's very digestible information is a challenge, just because when it comes to energy, sometimes people don't know where their energy is coming from, and that's okay, but that's our job to educate and tell them that. And as like I said, as the education coordinator, a big pushback would obviously be the people who do not believe in climate change or the climate crisis, obviously, which I think a lot of us as environmentalists face that in daily conversations sometimes. Obviously that is a challenge, but remember to stay positive and professional. Your job is to educate and advocate. But again, do not try to educate people who do not want to be educated. So yeah.
Yeah, I think my comments here are up at the same lane. Sustainability means something different to every single person you talk to. There's no way around it. It's the word and the term, and the industry has been co-opted in every direction you can imagine in the past decade. So my recommendation here is differentiate what it means to you and how it relates to your career goals. You know, unfortunately, no one here is going to solve the climate crisis, but you can play a role, and understanding that, you know, you have a role to play and you are part of the solution is really empowering. And for me and the clients I work for, I really see sustainability in very economic terms. You know, for a company that's got a bottom line as a private group that, you know, our clients pay the bills and keep our lights on, we're consistently trying to translate their goals through, you know, our recommendations for more sustainable practices, for, you know, addressing groundwater, soil, any type of contamination you know of, but understanding specifically for me, I guess it depends, the relationship you have, but specifically for me, I need to speak and understand the language and goals of my clients to better, recommend positive changes that reflect their economic terms. And that's a, kind of a harsh reality. Not everyone is in it to make the, solve issues related to climate, but if you can speak their terms and, clearly lay out a way that beyond just improving the natural world, that there's a return on investment, that's when you get folks interested.
Yeah, I think at Roquette, some of the biggest challenges that we have in trying to become more energy efficient and reduce our waste in our processes is, I guess, we have this large plant in Iowa and one in Illinois as well. And to be honest, they're pretty old facilities, old buildings. So a lot of that is updating our current facilities, installation of solar panels, redoing different buildings and bringing in new equipment, and really just this idea of continuous improvement and how do we continue to improve our processes and continue to reduce this footprint as well. I think that my best advice to students is when you're interviewing with various companies, ask them, is this one of your values? What is your commitment to sustainability? And really ask them to give you concrete examples as well as you're digging into those different organizations that you might want to be a part of. I think the biggest thing that you can do is if this is an area that you are passionate about, ensure that you are going to a company that their values align with your own. Because I think that at least here at Roquette, we really turn to our recent grads and our interns for their insights as well, right? I think that you all have fresh perspectives and new ideas to come and bring as well. So if this is an area that you're passionate about, you want to ensure that you can bring that to an organization that you are choosing for an internship or full-time role.
I'd like to agree with what Ben said about, having to talk to people about how these issues can also affect your bottom line. One of the biggest issues that I, run up against every day is that there's so many competing stakeholders in the work that you do in the environmental sector. What's best for the environment as a whole might not be what's best for a farmer or for the American consumer or for a shipping company who is trying to ship these products around the world. So trying to balance that tightrope and try to make everybody happy, but also trying to explain to them and educate them about why are we doing these things and the need for, a regulation that they may not agree with, but trying to convince, not convince, but try to educate people so that they can understand why we do the things that we do and how it really is in their own best interest most of the time.
All right. On the kind of flip side of that, what's the most exciting or important part of what you do? So, in other words, what keeps you working in a profession that's related to the environment and sustainability? This time we'll start with Claire and then move to Trysten, Noah, and wrap up with Ben.
Absolutely. I think that kind of going back to what I was sharing in the last question, I think it was really important to me to find a company that aligned with my personal values, not only on this front, but also, in the ways that we conduct business and interact with internal and external stakeholders. I think that was a huge piece for me in finding Roquette and really trying to find an organization that aligned with those values as well. So I think finding a company that you can stand behind and feel proud to work for. And I think that with so many companies to choose from, it's very easy to find companies that maybe don't align with these values that you have. So I think that is what kind of keeps me here at Roquette. I think I'm, in a little bit of a different space being in talent acquisition. I've worked for companies in different sectors as well. And I think really finding that one that feels right has been important and makes me want to stay with Roquette for a long time.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting parts of, I guess, my job and just working in the environmental sector are the people, and also just the public's participation. Also with my job, it's like I go into the office knowing what I have to do, what I'm gonna do, but that's not always what happens. And I like that, and that's how I operate. So I personally cannot stay in the office all the time. And with this job, one day I'm out planting 125 tree saplings. The next day we're doing energy audits in North Liberty. The next day we're going to Cedar Rapids for a prairie burn for a restoration project. And this job keeps me on my toes and it keeps me active, and I meet really cool people. And with environmental work, you will meet really cool people. So that's what keeps me going, and this is the sector I would like to work in for the rest of my life. So
Yeah, I can't agree with that enough. I think it's probably true for all of us here on the panel today. It's cliche to say, oh, your employees are your best asset, but I think it's really true, especially in the environmental sector. The people that work at USDA, they're here because they believe in the mission, because they want to, give back, work in the public sector, protect the environment, or human health, or whatever brought them to the USDA. Everyone is here because they believe in the mission. So yes, you get to meet the best people, I think, in the world doing this kind of work. And that's also the most exciting part about it, is that I've been able to travel all over the world with this job, all over the country. And, not as a tourist, but someone who's, going and living in a place for months at a time and really seeing how people live in other states and other countries. It really gives you an opportunity to learn about yourself, learn about the world. And so, I love it.
Yeah, I'll obviously echo all that. For me, what keeps me coming back is obviously a paycheck, number one, but number two is we work on a lot of different stuff every day. We serve about 500 clients a year and probably 4,000 projects across our team of 100. These are project groundwater testing, soil sampling, vapor intrusion, redevelopment planning, renewable energy, siting and permitting. I've been on archaeology digs before for some reason, architectural history, biodiversity stuff, geotechnical drilling, the list goes on. Something, positive about the private sector is we, at least within Eocene, we cross-train everyone at the ground level to be helpful on a lot of different projects. It helps prevent burnout, provides a higher level of job satisfaction, and really allows you to look at what you potentially want to do long term. I didn't know that I wanted to be in the redevelopment world until like 5 years ago, when I really started taking off in it. In addition to those, I think, protecting and restoring environmental resources, understanding that a lot of what we're doing has public health outcomes as well. We're providing data to a city for them to understand, you probably shouldn't build residential houses here. The soil vapor and the groundwater, none of it leads to good public health outcomes in the long term, right? These are solutions that protect people, and in addition to resources. And then lastly, I just wanted to add, we work in some of the coolest places. I know that Noah said he travels all around. I have to echo that 100%. National parks and forests. We've done industrial hygiene monitoring for Tesla before, big cities, small cities, and then telecom towers in the middle of nowhere. When a new tower needs to go up, we help permit those on the environmental standpoint. The list goes on of the cool places we've worked in. And I think it really is indicative of the industry that it allows you to see some really cool places.
Thank you. Those are all really great points. You heard it here first, everyone. This is the coolest field to be in. So any students that are considering it, you're going to be around a lot of cool people. All right, so moving on, what are some key skills, qualities, and/or experiences that students could work toward to help them be successful in environmental and sustainability careers? This time we will start with Noah and go to Claire, then Ben, then Trysten.
Great. Well, what I have to say, I think it's applicable to any career that people want to follow. What's really hot right now in in our hiring is these transferable soft skills. Once you have a degree, that'll get you the basic technical qualifications. But what people are really looking for right now is those skills that people have and they can gain in their everyday life: communication, teamwork, flexibility. All these kinds of skills are so in demand right now, and they'll serve you well. We've talked about having a broad set of different skills and a portfolio of work that you've done, and having these kinds of soft skills, they'll serve you well no matter what kind of career path you end up taking. So I would really encourage everyone to go to events like this where they can network and find out more. Join a club, join an organization, do anything to get those kinds of experiences, especially when you're young, starting out on a career, pivoting careers. It's so important to try to have, how do you get that experience without experience? Well, it doesn't have to be paid experience. You can get these experiences from anything. So definitely just be active. I always encourage people to do things like use iNaturalist and go on a bio blitz, or to join a science club at their school. I mean, that you can learn so many great leadership and teamwork skills. And that's what I think employers are really looking for right now.
Was I next? I think I was next. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I would echo what Noah said as well. I think that it's so important to be able to build your resume in ways that also, if you have an internship, that's great. But if you don't, that's also okay too. Getting involved in things that show your passions outside of school as well. And then networking, being able to go up to people at career fairs and seek out different companies and ask questions. Doing your research ahead of time. I think that it's important to learn things in school and through different experiences, internships as well. But being able to have conversations and talk about the things that you're passionate about and being able to sell yourself and your skill set is just as important too. So yeah, I would say probably campus involvement is the biggest thing that I look for on a resume. It shows that you do have those soft skills that Noah was speaking to. Then it also helps to highlight your interests as well. So whether it be an engineering club, a different environmental club, you're able to kind of hone in on those experiences and then speak to those in interviews too. So yeah, I think trying to get involved in things kind of outside just your day-to-day, working a part-time job, you can learn so much from working customer service jobs, in restaurants and retail stores as well. I think that really teaches a lot of soft skills that you might not also gain elsewhere.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm not on the recruiting side of our company. I'm on the project side, but I have hired in the past, and 100% look for those. You'd think they would be irrelevant experiences. If you can craft those experiences in a way that, there's positive outcomes, they are definitely applicable to pretty much any job you're looking for. The point here I wanted to come up with, or, let folks know at least what, I'm seeing in the environmental consulting side is technical writing is a massive skill that we, without asking for a writing sample at the time of hiring, like this is something we look for when we're hiring. The ability to be concise and translate highly technical data for decision makers to utilize is a big skill. We are required by the industry to produce technical reports that meet, let's say, ASTM standards, for example. But the ability to take that report and synthesize into a few bullet points into a one-pager or an email to your client is highly valuable. Clients are gonna, and the community, whoever you're serving, right, is going to be appreciative that you're not shoving 30 pages of information at them, and instead you're giving them what they need to know to continue their busy lives like you have and we have. So, the just concise technical writing is something that we really look for. And I wanted to speak to the networking side of the discussion. I think that Noah kind of started with, as upcoming graduates or the folks on this call, I'm sure that you're told to death that networking is the way forward, and it's because it's mainly true. As much as nobody really, like there's very few people that like to network, right? It's not nobody wants to go and talk and use all those how's the weather type speech, but I landed my current position after having lunch with the mutual connection. We realized as we talked for 2 hours, I had skills that they were hiring for, and the next day I got a job offer. Like in at least in environmental consulting, and that's how a lot of people find their way in the door is mutual connections and the ability to quickly shoot someone an email and be like, hey, do you guys have any opportunities? How do I stay connected with your company? So, as much as you might hate it, networking, it is a very viable path forward to finding a career, or at least a foot in the door with the company you might want to work for.
Yeah, I think what everybody else said, perfect, and I agree with. But I think like in the environmental field, it is important to, obviously be professional and passionate. It's okay to be a well-rounded individual as well. And it's also good to know that like almost any job can work on climate initiatives and sustainability within their scope of work. And like Ben and Noah were saying, networking is powerful. Do not be afraid to talk to people, even though sometimes I know sometimes you just don't want to do it, but it does help. For example, I was working at a retail job and I just said hello to somebody and they noticed my North Carolina accent and she was like, oh, you're not from here. And I said, no. And then I was like, from North Carolina. And she was too. And she turns out to be the dean of the College of Public Health, and she is helping me apply to graduate school. So it really does help out to just talk to people. Yeah, again, be professional. And on other side of things, obviously doing certifications helps as well. Sometimes they are expensive, but a lot of internships or even your place of employment will pay for those certificates. So for example, my program is paying for my BPI certification. That's the Building Performance Institute, where I can go in and do energy audits on residential housing properties. So never be afraid to get certifications on things you're interested in, and don't be afraid to market yourself as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And maybe even something to be asking about in potential interviews of like what possible training or certifications are available through this company. So good thoughts all around. We have one more question, official question to ask, and then we can open it up to audience from there. So knowing that students are in a similar position to where you might have been when you first embarked on your career, what's one piece of advice you can share with them that you wish someone would have told you at that age? So this time we will start back with Trysten, and then Ben, Claire, and wrap up with Noah.
Okay, I love this question. I think it's amazing. So I graduated with my undergraduate in 2022, so pretty recent. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Also, it was during COVID, which was no fun. But I leaned into those things I was passionate about to find my next step. So the environmental field where I was at in North Carolina was just not hiring, or if they were, the money was not matching what I needed. So I was studying Japanese at the time, and I saw a company hiring in Japan, and I've always wanted to go, so I went and did it. At the time, it felt a little reckless, but very thankful for it, and I think it made me the person I am today. But sometimes it's okay to not know what your next step is. It will all fall in place. You just have to, again, market yourself and trust yourself and the process. And sometimes these experiences you will be like, I don't know how I got here. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. Yeah, because I mean, you have the rest of your life to work. You might as well enjoy part of it. So yeah, it's okay not to know what you're going to do and what the next step is, but just stay passionate and just keep going.
Yep. So my thoughts on this one, my first initial thought was keep in touch with your advisor after you leave college or after you graduate. Something that I routinely, I was getting routine coffees with my college advisor, undergrad college advisor for several years. We were both still local, and I was only really introduced to the private world in those conversations. The private consulting world wasn't, the introduction to it in school wasn't huge. We really had to dig to understand more of what the consulting world, it does and is, because, from a education standpoint, these programs are very, here's policy, here's the theory and the understanding of what's out there, but we're not talking about the people that are boots on the ground doing the assessments, getting your feet wet in a wetland, these people actually doing the work to provide the data as an outcome of a policy. It's not really presented in, at least in my experience at the education level. And it just seems like the ability to stay connected with your advisor, they know what's out there and they have the ability to see, you've worked in the public side, maybe nonprofit or private's the right next step to try to pivot and introduce yourself to something new. And my second point was very similar as a segue. Be open to something that isn't a perfect fit from day one. My second job wasn't a perfect fit. But what it did lead to was, understanding that I didn't like that, and that, there's a lot of things out there to do. A lot. I was just looking at a new list that came out from our company of different staff levels and staff classifications, and I think it was like 1,500 lines long. So when you think about the breadth of job opportunities that are out there, consider that, if you really want to be a groundwater specialist, that's great, but don't limit yourself to just that, because specifically groundwater, it's not going to pay the bills day in and day out, but just realize there are a lot of opportunities within even just a single company. So your first job's most likely not going to be your last, and be open to that.
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice, and actually my first, kind of going to sound cliche, but I'll explain. My first boss ever after my first job when I graduated college taught me this, and it was just that, like, you're going to make mistakes. There's no mistake that cannot be fixed or that you can't learn from. So I think the biggest piece of advice that I have is just, it's okay to make mistakes, and more so than that, when you do make mistakes, it's important to own it. And I think that I've learned a lot when I have gone to managers in the past and been like, oh my gosh, I really screwed this up, or I forgot to do this, or kind of walk them through what the mistake or mishap was. I never once got yelled at. They sat down with me and problem solved. And not only did we learn how to fix whatever the problem was, but then I also learned how to approach problems in the future, right? And I think that now when I mess up, or I have an issue, I approach them much more calmly and rationally than maybe I once did. So I guess, yeah, not only like not being afraid to make mistakes, but then leaning on people that have more experience than you to figure out how to navigate those problems, and then to learn from them as well, and kind of grow as you continue to navigate mishaps, because they're going to happen throughout your career. It's never going to go away. Everybody's going to make mistakes all the time. Still, I made a mistake earlier today, but I think I'm better equipped with how to figure it out. So I think you learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of what's been said. Trying to find a mentor is great, whether it's somebody from your university or if it's somebody who's maybe more established in their career at the company that you're working for. Somebody who can kind of guide you and show you different ways to approach the problems that you might encounter in your job, to give you career advice. And I'd also really encourage people to not pigeonhole themselves. Like Ben was saying, your first job's probably not going to be your perfect job. I've pivoted over and over and over again. I started this job being a field inspector because I joined the Department of Agriculture because I wanted to be outside and I wanted to get my feet and my hands dirty. I never thought I'd be working on international trade policy. I never thought I'd be working on, disease or recruitment. So, and I always tell people not to pigeonhole themselves because I talk to a lot of students that are very, this is what I want to do. And they don't maybe understand how much overlap there is in different companies and different organizations. I meet a lot of people that, oh, I want to work for the Park Service, but they never think about, oh, the Forest Service is part of the Department of Agriculture, and that's even more land. Or I want to work for the EPA. There's so much overlap in what these different, companies and government organizations do. So really don't pigeonhole yourself, really cast a broad net, especially when you're getting started, I think is really important. And then I'd also, in that same vein, I'd encourage people to kind of research the company or the organization they're applying to. First off, that way you'll have a better concept of what kind of work that they do, if it's the kind of field that you're interested in. And also you'll be able to speak much more intelligently when you get that interview, if you know a little bit about, how the company is run and the kind of work that they do. I've been here for 22 years with the Department of Agriculture, and I'm still learning new things every day. We have 100,000 employees, and it's amazing all the different work that we do. So, and I'd also, like I said, really research that company so that it just makes you sound so much more intelligent. And different people have different hiring methods. Federal hiring is much different than what you usually see in the private sector. We want a different kind of resume. We want 5-page resumes. So all that bullet points in one page goes right out the window. We have all these big panel interviews. And so, if you research a little bit and you learn about this, you'll be much more well prepared.
All right, well, panelists, thank you so much. Great insights, wonderful career advice. Couldn't have asked for a better panel. You did great. Thank you so much. I know that at least one of you had to dip out early, so if you need to leave, that's totally fine. But we'll go ahead and open it up to the audience for questions. We did have one already in the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask that, and anyone can jump in to answer if you'd like to. So this person mentioned as an academic advisor here, they often have students ask how much their specific major, environmental science versus environmental policy versus sustainability, or type of degree, like a BA versus a BS, impacts their job prospects. I know it can vary, but is there a general recommendation you have for students who are asking this question? The second part is, do the companies/organizations you work for have strict requirements on this, or do they look more at things like internships, work experience, transferable skills, etc.?
Yeah, I can take this from our perspective, a private environmental consulting firm. To my knowledge and experience, a BA versus a BS is it doesn't matter. The field matters more. Environmental science versus environmental policy versus sustainability in our world means more or less the same thing. I'm sure the coursework is a little different, but I wouldn't stress out about that at all. I don't think it, if it's on the fence between you and another person that has science versus policy, it's not going to come down to the degree. It's going to come down to how well you interviewed and, your overall package, not just the degree. So simple answer for, in my world is we don't hire or not hire because someone doesn't have the perfect major. And I think Noah said it, your degree is kind of the entry for a lot of these. It's the, and regardless of type in our experience and major, the degree is kind of the basis. It's undergraduate required, master's preferred, or something to that degree.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the same is true for most of our hiring. Usually in our positions that require a degree, they paint it with very broad brushstrokes. So it's just biology, agriculture, sustainability, natural sciences, or a related degree. And a lot of times they'll just be asking for somebody who has, you know, maybe 16 credit hours in biology or 16 credit hours in economics. So I think that the degree, it'll get your foot in the door, but they're really looking at the person a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think mostly the person and experiences that you can bring to the table as well. Even at, you know, I recruit everything from entry level to executive, and a lot of times it's like, you know, MBA preferred or business degree or related field preferred, things like that as well. So even as you continue on in your career, I almost feel like the degree kind of starts to matter less and less as well. And it's all focused on your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question actually had to do kind of about Iowa City, and the one person who works in Iowa City right now had to leave early. But you all still might have some insights on this, and I can reach out to Trysten individually as well. What are some of your ideas for projects / things to tackle for a sustainability-based student organization to take on? And they ask specifically in and around Iowa City.
The threat of endangered species, just because that's what I work on. And I'm always trying to, you know, educate people about the threat of endangered species.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Another question was, what has been the most fulfilling experience related to your job?
That's a good question. Claire, now you can jump in if you have something off the top of your head. Feeling.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is going to be a little bit different than those that work like directly in the field. But I find it to be really rewarding when I meet a great student at a career fair and they are passionate about their interests, and I know that they will align really nicely with our teams and our mission as a company. And even as if sometimes I think of a specific hiring manager that I know that they would be a great fit with. And it's really rewarding for me when that ends up happening. And once I have the two meet in an interview, they end up really liking each other, and there's potential there. And then, yeah, I kind of think of myself as a little bit of a matchmaker in that way. But I find it to be really rewarding, even more so than if we're lucky enough to have a candidate accept an offer. And then I hear 6 months down the line that they're doing really well in the role and they reach out to me and they're really enjoying it. So not only getting the person through the door, but I think the feedback that I hear as they continue throughout the company has been really fulfilling for me.
I think for me, thank you. I had time to think, Claire. Has been a few projects that I've been a part of that we were able to take from kind of step one to all the way to a groundbreaking. So, for example, a couple communities and projects I've worked on, we engage the community to talk about their issues, to talk about, you know, if they've got any problem properties, as we call them. And in a few instances, we've been able to look at a property and find, you do all the environmental investigations we need to do, you know, provide the city what they need to make educated decisions on how to acquire and potentially abate and demolish and rebuild. And those couple projects, you know, these things take, for a single property could take, you know, for a redevelopment like this could take 5 years or more, right? It's not a fast process by any means. So when you take a property from, you know, the worst one on the block to a new housing complex that serves housing demand, and you know, seeing that from start to finish is really fulfilling in terms of, you know, it's safe to live in, it's providing economic benefit to the city, it provides lower crime, all these things that come with a redevelopment like that, is just a fulfilling, especially when you can take it from start to end instead of coming on at the tail end and you weren't really a part of it per se. So.
Noah, anything you want to add?
I disagree. I love working on part of what I love about working for the government is I love working on all these big projects. And Ben talked about the variety of different projects that he's gotten to work on. And to me, that's like the most exciting part is, going behind the scenes and seeing how things really work, or helping somebody out with a big problem. And just the constant variety of things. Last week I was doing farm bill funding, and so that's one of my favorite parts of the year because I get to give away millions of dollars. So who wouldn't like that?
Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and end there. Again, panelists, thank you so much for your insights and for sharing your time with us today. It's been very valuable. And for our audience members, thank you for attending this. So with that, we are officially done. Thank you again so much for being here, everyone.